So, Manchester United have been doing some very interesting business this week as 18-year-old Mali midfielder Sekou Kone has agreed a deal to join the club. Now, today we're going to be going through all the interesting details about this move and most importantly, the details around his long-term position at Old Trafford and how he could move into the first team squad. So first of all, we've got to go through the man who broke the story. Of course, it was Fabrizio Romano. He got the exclusive details that the 2006 born midfielder had agreed to sign for Manchester United. And interestingly, he added that Kone was considered a long-term part of United's plans, similar to Chido Obi Martin. Now, we all know that United agreed a deal to sign the striker, the 16-year-old striker who scored 32 goals, I think it was, in the under-18s Premier League. That deal was a done deal essentially, but United are just going through the proper procedures with the Premier League with these kind of deals for young players. But that deal's done, this deal's done, and it seems that both Obi Martin and Kone are going to be parts of the long-term plan at Old Trafford. Now, next up, it's very interesting, the fee, because the fee is only £1 million as per Romano. He added that, of course, there's going to be performance-related add-ons, so I assume if he gets into the first team and does well, there could be stuff on top of that, but the exact figures haven't been released. But £1 million up front, it's a low-risk, high-reward deal. And where have we seen those deals before? So obviously, I've seen a few people mention this, so I decided to look for myself. So we signed Kone from this Mali club, Gudars FC, and if you go through their recent transfer activity, in particular departures, you will see several players heading to RB Salzburg. So obviously there's a connection there. Where's that connection fit in with United, you might ask? Well, if I just remind you that United did bring in Christopher Vivell this summer as the interim head of recruitment, head of scouting. He had previous experience at RB Salzburg, Leipzig, and of course Chelsea, which didn't quite work out. But it does seem clear that his experience at the RB clubs, creating that almost pathway to the Mali-based club, seems to have come into play here. It seems like it's a deal which involved him heavily. That's an interesting point to make as well. Now, when I first saw this deal last night, I probably had a similar reaction to a lot of you. I didn't know much at all about this player. I didn't know whether he'd be a first team signing, a youth signing. It was all up in the air, really. Of course, there was a few people on Twitter, on Instagram, who were familiar with this player from his performances at the Under-17s World Cup, and they were very excited, but it was still unknown. So we got to The Athletic, who reported on the deal, and they gave us a little bit more detail on what we can expect his role to be as he comes into the club. So they mentioned that he's a defensive midfielder, which, I mean, United fans probably just celebrated there and then. They're actually buying a player in that position, albeit that he'll be for the long term. But yeah, they essentially detailed that United's plan is to bed him in with the under-21s first of all. That's allowing him to adjust to life in England, and they're conscious of the huge cultural change that he will experience, because he's not going from Mali to maybe a random European club, maybe in Switzerland, etc., Sweden. He's not made that middle jump. He's going straight from his home country all the way over to England. That could be a very daunting experience for a player in their 20s, let alone someone who's just 18. So The Athletic detailed that United want to take a steady approach to his integration, but most importantly, it was added that Kone is viewed as having high potential, and while he's one for the future, it is hoped that he will provide an option for the first team in that number 6 role in the long term. So this deal, from what we know so far with what Romano's reported from this Athletic report, we know that it is a longer term signing. But the Manchester Evening News also added some details about how this player will fit into the club as he comes in. They reiterate what the Athletic mentioned, that he will join up with the under-21s, but he will be spending some time with Erik ten Hag's first team squad on the training ground, kind of getting used to the surroundings, getting used to some of those players in the first team, because that's a thing that can really help your development. We saw it with Mainu, we saw it with Garnacho. Almost throwing them into the training environment was probably just as important as them playing. So yeah, he's going to be involved in the training, and the Manchester Evening News did add that he could be fast-tracked into the first team if he demonstrates that he can basically hold his own in training, which is a very exciting prospect, because I'm sure many people didn't know this player 2 days ago, and now this is a player who, if they do play well in training, play well behind the scenes, we could be seeing them in the first team this season. Now, Kone, I'm sure a lot of you have done the same as me and watched a load of highlights on YouTube and checked out what some people who are a bit more familiar with him are saying. And it seems that he ticks the right boxes for what United need in that role. He looks incredibly athletic. He's almost got, quite similar to Lenny Euro, that he's got quite long limbs, and not as lanky as Euro, but he's got long limbs to be able to drive with the ball, tackle, cover ground. I think that was the most impressive part in some of the highlights I watched, is how well he seemed to cover ground, which, I mean, it doesn't take a genius to know that that would really benefit United's midfield. But yeah, it looks like a positive deal, and there's a really interesting trend here where United have signed 3 very, very exciting teenagers this summer. You've got Lenny Euro, you've got Kone, and you've also got Obi Martin up front. There's a centre-back, a centre midfielder, and a striker. And then you also look at the moves that they're making in the first team squad, maybe more established players. You've got Matthias de Ligt, 25. You've got Ugarte, who should be coming in the next days, 24. And then you've also got Joshua Zirkzee, who's 23. So you've almost got 2 generations of a spine there. And while not all 6 of those players could be amazing players for United in the future, there's some good talent there, and the experienced players are still quite young. So you look at the kind of development process there, and when Kone is 22, 23, and a bit more experience, when Obi Martin's maybe 19, 20, and a lot more experience because he's got years on his side there. And then you also look at Lenny Euro, who will be in the first team squad anyway when he's back from injury. But once these players hit the 22, 23, when they're really starting to come into their own as a professional, the 3 more senior players will only be in their late 20s, mid-20s for Ugarte and Zirkzee. So it's a really exciting prospect that you've got a spine there who will be almost in the prime years of their career as these other talented prospects almost come through. Now, of course, we don't know whether Kone or Chido Obi Martin will absolutely just blow people away in the youth teams and be needed to bring into the first team squad early like Kobbie Mainoo was, but that spine allows them to take their time with these talents. Now, everyone is probably asking the same question. Is he the midfield partner for Kobbie Mainoo? Because, of course, there are question marks surrounding Ugarte and whether he fits next to Mainoo in United's system. He will probably be an upgrade on what we've got currently, but United should be looking for that top tier, the best possible partner for Kobbie Mainoo. Now, is he? I don't know. His highlights look promising. He looks quite solid in most of the fundamentals that you expect from a number 6. But an interesting point made by Academy Scoop on X, he's a very good academy-based journalist. He spoke about Kone's performances at the Under-17s World Cup. And I mean, they performed extremely well. I checked it out, and last year in the Under-17s Africa Cup of Nations, they got to the semi-finals, losing out against Morocco, and then they lost the 3rd place playoff. But then in the Under-17s World Cup, they actually made it to the semi-finals again, losing out to France, and then winning the 3rd place playoff against Argentina. So they really performed in those 2 tournaments, and Kone was a vital part in their performances. Now, I'll kind of just skim through this thread. If you want to read it in full, I'll link it in the description below. But essentially, Academy Scoop goes through his performances at that World Cup and speaks about how his relationship with his midfield partner Hamidou Makalu, not sure if I got that one right, but how they kind of work together. And he mentions that Makalu is very similar in profile to Kobbie Mainoo, a box-to-box midfielder with creative and progressive instincts. Quite similar, you would say, to Kobbie Mainoo. And he was able to get forward that tournament and help out in the attacks because Kone was almost holding down in those defensive areas. And in particular, the account mentioned that Kone did not only possess the athletic qualities, which I mentioned before, but he also has really good positional intelligence to anticipate those situations where his midfield partner might get caught out, the ball might be turned over and there's a counter-attacking opportunity. He was good in those situations, which allowed that relationship with his midfield partner to flourish. Now, obviously, there's a lot more detail in this thread and it was a very interesting read, but I'll leave that in the description below for you to read in detail if you'd like. But I think the premise is that this 18-year-old midfielder, we can't put all of our hopes on him, but the signs so far in his game, in his strengths, how he would fit on the pitch, it does seem like he would be a good partner for Kobbie Mainoo. But of course, there's so many different aspects with development, with getting into the first team that you have to consider. So there's a lot to happen before he gets his break in the first team. But it's a very interesting deal. Let me know what you think about it in the comments below. Do you think that this is a good deal? Have you ever watched this player before? I know there's a few youth experts who have been watching this player for almost a year, and they must be very happy that the deal has been done. But it's good to see United addressing their number 6, because I think you do look at the market and there's no outstanding number 6s. There's not a Rodri on the market. There's no longer a Declan Rice on the market. So United are looking at Ugarte and he could be a good fit. But I like the fact that they're also going for a wild card, going for an unknown entity to develop and hopefully become the Rodri. When INEOS came in, that's what we wanted. We didn't want to sign Casemiro's all the time. We wanted to sign the next Casemiro, the next Mbappe. That's how Sir Jim Ratcliffe put it. So it's nice to see these deals for young players getting done, and it's nice to see the balance with the first team squad. I'll leave you on that. Let me know what you think about that deal. Let me know what you think about United's summer transfer window so far, because there might be, obviously Ugarte is going to come in, but not much else expected other than that. So yeah, let me know what you think. I'll see you in the next one.